I thought I would do a quick kind of review and any of my thoughts and opinions on this book. I recently finished Ready Player One. It was a really great read. It lived up to my expectations. I loved it. I recommend anybody to read it. Here's the non-spoiler version of this review. Basically, Ready Player One, it is written by Ernest Cline. I believe that's how you say his name. And he's also coming out with Ready Player 2 soon. So this novel came out back, I believe, in 2014. And they made a movie about it as well, and it came out in 2018. The movie wasn't that bad. I haven't seen it in a long time, and I actually watched the movie before I read the book. And I would like to rewatch it just because I don't really remember if they stuck wholeheartedly to the novel. Kind of wondering what he's gonna do for the next one, because I really liked this one. It was really great. It's based off of the internet, but it's more so about video games. So if you're really into sci-fi, futuristic, dystopian video game genre, also very heavily referenced a lot of old school video games. It takes place in the year 2045 in Wisconsin or Massachusetts, I can't remember which, where is told through the perspective of a young boy who graduates from high school, and his name is Wade Olson Watts. He is addicted to video games. Pretty much everybody in this story is addicted to video games. The video game is pretty much similar to VR, like the technology that we have, but it is a lot more advanced, and the system is called the Oasis, and pretty much everybody lives in this oasis because they feel like, well, the world is dying in this story, and people are pretty much not okay with being in the real world. Everybody has pretty much created their world in this virtual reality and is too blind to see that like the real world can be just as great as a video game. Well, the Oasis was invented by this man named James Holliday, and he ends up passing away. He passes away before the book even starts, so he basically created this system, and he was kind of like socially awkward, so he really liked video games, and he also wanted to escape from reality as well. So that's the reason why he created this system. Anyway, so when he passed away, he wanted his legacy to live on, so in doing so he created a contest. Kind of reminds me of Willy Wonka when you really think about it. So yeah, he created this contest to pretty much have these anybody could compete in the contest to find this Easter egg that was hidden within the Oasis, and they would get $500 billion and would have complete control over the Oasis. Pretty much everybody is fighting to find the Easter egg, so it's through a bunch of trials. It's kind of like a quest thing. They have to find keys and go through gates, things like that, and they all pretty much do a lot of research on his legacy. For the most part, there's a thing called the Almanac. I can't remember what the full name of it is, but yeah, they do a lot of research on who he was, what he did, all of his favorite movies and genres. There's a lot of references from Star Wars all the way to Atari video games and Pac-Man, and like just a bunch of different references here and there. Iron Giant is one of them. A lot of superhero references as well. Literally the first few lines, Wade talks about how he's also an orphan. His parents both died when he was really young, and the first few lines he talks about how his father named him Wade Watson, kind of similar to like Peter Parker, like a superhero name, or Bruce Wayne. He literally says that in the first few lines. So right off the bat, you're kind of like introduced to like there's going to be a lot of references within this novel. So he lives with his aunt. He doesn't really get along with her very well, and yeah, he's just really addicted to the Oasis. He goes online very often. He also goes through school through it as well. He learns through it. Pretty much like his online character goes to school virtually, kind of similarly to what's been going on as of late. But yeah, so for the most part, he's on the hunt for this Easter egg, him and his friend H. There's another character called Artemis, eventually falls in love with her as well. And there are two other characters called Daito and Soto, I believe is his name. For the most part, they are all fighting to get this Easter egg, and of course there's always a villain. So there's a villain called the Sixers, and it's just a group of organizational people who are trying to get control of the Oasis so that they can actually charge people to use the service because right now it's actually free, and they want to take control of it. They're going about the quest in like the wrong way because they're pretty much it's pretty much a company who's trying to get control of the whole entire thing. So they have tons of people working on it. So they have a lot of like catalog people, a lot of people who know research, who do research on James Holiday in the novel. So they kind of have an unfair disadvantage, and they also spy on other people, so to try to get ahead in the competition. And then there's other stuff too. There's like some blackmail, and there's other stuff that happens along within the story as well. Unlike Feed, I did feel like this kind of almost made it seem like technology was a good thing, just because it's told through the perspective of like, this is a video game, and like, yes, it's taking over these people's lives, but they didn't really like, there were a couple of times where it was mentioned of like how the world is, you know, disintegrating. There's only a couple of moments where it's like, yeah, like these people actually have no social life, their life is online, it's taking over their life, and this is not okay, you know, like things should not be this way. And there are hints of that, but it's not like super preachy like Feed kind of was, because there was a character that kind of did that a lot. I thought it was amazing, and I would definitely give this a 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. So yeah, okay, we're gonna get into the non-spoiler part of this review. So if you have not read this book, skip this part. Like I said, it lived up to all of my expectations. I did watch the movie prior to reading this book. Granted, I don't remember that much about the movie just because it's been 4 years? Nope. 3. I think 3 or 2 years since I've watched it, and I don't remember a lot that happened. I do remember watching the trailer for it when it first came out, and I was kind of like, oh my god, that looks so cool, and I didn't know it was based off of a book. And then I ended up watching it before I read the book, and I was kind of like, oh my god, like it looked really cool. Like I'm the type of person that really likes nostalgia type stuff. I'm also really into video games, so I really related to this so much. I read this book. I actually thought that the movie was gonna like really spoil a lot of things for me. I mean, it kind of did spoil a little bit of stuff. You'll have all of this power over this one system that controls everybody's lives, and I thought that the love relationship was really cute and sweet, and like just the way that they talked about like, well, you know, like you never know who's gonna be behind like online, like you like don't date people online. And I'm like, you know how many people I know who date online nowadays? Yeah, like the characters were really fun to read. The one thing that did get spoiled for me was H's identity. It would have been nice to just read that, you know, spoiler, because rather than watching it, because it just spoiled that for me. The fact that she was a African woman who wasn't a dude the whole entire time. I don't know, it kind of also felt like weird to kind of, I know some people, I think I've read like some articles about how like it could be stereotypical to have like characters like that because there's not like a lot of diversity within this novel, but I thought it was really good either way. I still really liked her character. She was really cool to read. Her lines were very funny the whole entire time, and Wade was a very interesting character to read as well. He was very nerdy at times, but there were also moments where I was kind of just like, you know what, I can kind of relate to you. Even though you're a nerd and you cite songs when you reference songs when you hear them, and you're like, I know that lyric. I was just like, you know what, I appreciate you. I'm fine with that. You're okay. Yeah, with all the references within the novel, I know some people can probably like hate that. We're like, oh my god, I don't want to be reminded of like this reference or that reference, or I don't get this. And like there were times where I didn't get certain references because I just wasn't, you know, born around that era, or that just wasn't my kind of genre, or I wasn't really into that. But it was fine for me. I do think that one thing that I really loved about this novel compared to the movie, because I didn't add this part, was the whole section where Wade pretty much loses his aunt. And like when I read that part, I completely forgot that he said that he wasn't really close to her, but he still kind of felt bad, but he didn't really like mourn too much about that. And I felt like that was really, I didn't think that like, oh my god, that's messed up that you didn't mourn about your aunt. But at the same time, it kind of also plays into the fact that like these people really don't have social lives. They don't really like connect with people outside in the real world, so that kind of actually correlates to this character when you really think about it, because like yeah, that's probably the reason why he wasn't really close with his aunt, because not just because like he just didn't get along with her in general, but also because he wasn't really there in reality all that much either. Reading about the part where like the Sixers blackmail him and then end up killing like the whole entire section of where he lived was really messed up, and that was really just like horrible when you really think about it. But it was also kind of really crazy that he actually didn't believe that they would do it. I'm kind of just like, are you for sure you don't think that they would do it? Like, I feel like they would do that. One part that really stood out to me that I really liked about the novel compared to the movie was where Wade pretty much is on the run because they tried to kill him. And when he pretty much just like creates his own identity, this kid is like a senior and he knows how to do all this stuff, which was also kind of crazy to think. He was on the run, he changed his identity, he ends up working for a particular company, and then he talks about how like he literally spends hours on end within the Oasis just to find these keys and these gates for the quest. And the way he talks about it, how like my whole entire life is dedicated to this, and I'm like, dude, you're a senior. And then he's talking about how like he doesn't really eat, he just eats this like protein shake mix thing that his like operating system creates, which the operating system, I can't remember what his name is, but he's super funny. They didn't create the same character within the movie, but I believe that they created a new character that was kind of similar to his operating system, but it was hilarious. I loved the operating system. The way that he talked about how like, oh yeah, he's programmed to kind of sound glitchy, and I'm like, that is amazing. I love that detail. But anyway, so the fact that he talks about how like I don't really eat, I eat this weird sludge, upgraded my system and this and this and this, and then he also talks about how like, yeah, so like I don't really groom myself anymore, so that's the reason why like I take these products so that I don't have hair on my head or my eyebrows. And I'm just like, all of this so that you can be in a video game system. Like, can you imagine? It kind of was similar to this, where like everybody was disintegrating like physically because of the way the atmosphere was, whereas these characters, they're kind of almost idolizing that too as well, but they're not disintegrating, they're choosing to actually like, you know, be very low maintenance so that they can just live their lives in this virtual reality. Reading that whole part, I was just like, man, that is not a way to live at all. That was crazy to read. Just the fact that he was saying like, yeah, I'm stuck in the house all day, and he literally talks about how like going outside is overrated. I'm just kind of like, you know, I kind of agree with that sometimes, but I don't know, during quarantine with everything going on, I'm kind of just like, I would rather not be inside all the time, and I do miss socializing with my friends. I feel like in general human beings are very social creatures, so to say, I mean, I guess like you're compensating for the fact that you're in a virtual reality and you are talking to people, but at the same time, like there are also moments within the story where he's like, I don't physically get touched by people, or like I don't like shake people's hands, or like, you know, really see people unless they're in the Oasis. And I'm like, that's not a way to live, but okay. The Pac-Man scene, the fact that he was just so fixated on this Pac-Man game, and then he's just like, yeah, I won this quarter and I don't know what it does, and then later on we find out that like, oh yeah, it was an extra life. And I'm like, that's really cool, and I really appreciate that. I thought that was like a really cute little detail. It was interesting just to see him how Wade was fixated on these different games, and how he kind of was just like, this is my life. Artemis was kind of she wasn't preachy about how like the world was ending, but she did talk about how like, you know, our world that we live in isn't great. I feel like in the movie they did give her more of a character-based arc of like, yeah, she's a part of a rebellion and like she wants to change the world, whereas here we kind of don't know a lot about her. We just know that she wants to do right with the money, that if she wins the prize she wants to actually help out the world, but we don't really hear that much about her side of the story. Wade kind of does have a perspective on like the views of like what the world is like, and he's like, yeah, like I see how like there's so many homeless people and this and this and this, and he's like, yeah, it's not right, but it's our life. Whereas we don't really get that perspective from Artemis all that much, and her name is Samantha, and Parzival. I think the names are so hilarious. I love it so much. And H, or Helena. And the character names are just amazing. I love them. The scene where he pretty much puts himself to be indentured, and the fact that like it really did remind me of like our system today, where like you're always in debt and like this and this and this, and I'm just like, that is a real thing that can happen. But the whole entire time of like how he's like, yeah, I did this so that I could like get secrets out of the Sixer headquarters and this and this and this, and I'm like, dude, like you had some guts to do that, okay? And just to like get all of that intel. And then there was one part where he was kind of like, yeah, I got these like program like applications to try and get information through the Sixer headquarters, and he's like, and I haven't tested them out because you can only test them out if you're like within the system. So he even talks about how like, if this doesn't work, then I just put myself in the life of servitude. And I just read that and I'm like, oh my god, that's crazy. And also it was really sad to also read about how like, oh well, some people are fine with being indentured because it's kind of like a backup system for you, where like you have a place to stay and you have food to eat, which I mean is cool, but like at the same time that shouldn't be like a positive. But I get where it's coming from. I didn't realize that one of the characters does die, and that was the duo who was Daito or it was Soto, I can't remember which one it was, but one of them gets killed by the Sixer headquarters, and I don't think that was in they talked about that in the movie, and I thought that part was very well, just like the quest overall, like how they found the information. Like I was paying attention to it, but at the same time I didn't get a lot of the references, even though that was fine for me. I'm fine with not getting all the references, but at the same time I was kind of like, you know what, that's kind of cool, and that's not what I would have expected to happen, and this and this and this. I did feel bad that Artemis had broken things off with Wade in the beginning. I was like, no, how could you do that to him? Now he's gonna be all alone. But I mean, I get where it was coming from, but still. And the fact that he just kind of like became an instant superstar overnight was hilarious. And he's just like, yeah, like I can do all these things and I'm a senior, and I'm just like, man, I'm over here in a shitty ass apartment and I can't even get my life together. The ending was really, really, really great. I love the message behind it. I can't remember what his name is, but he was like a close friend with James Holiday. But the conversation between him and Wade at the end, where they were talking about how James Holiday had a crush or was in love with his wife for a very, very long time, and they talked about how like, yeah, he was socially awkward and he told me this before he died, and I, you know, and the guy ends up protecting the group by the end of it. I thought was really great for him. Just not great for him. I thought it was really sweet that he like went out of his way to protect these kids, because when you really think about it, they are just young kids. We do know a little bit about Artemis as well. And then I remember we know that she's in college, and I forget what she was studying, but we really don't know that much about her when you really think about it. We know more about H than we do about Artemis when you really think about it. With the one character who was friends with James Holiday, just the conversation that he had with Wade was really endearing. I was like, man, this is a real legitimate human conversation, which I don't know, I kind of felt like throughout the whole entire thing we didn't have a whole lot of that. It was more so like game strategy, whereas like everything else was just game strategy, and then you have this really heartfelt conversation. Also, the conversation between Wade and the hologram or the program of James Holiday was really sweet. The fact that he talked about, here you will have access, you'll be invincible, but you'll also have access to this button that will actually destroy everything that's in this system. So if you want to destroy all of it, you can. And he's like, I trust you. And I'm like, man, you trust him? Like, I trust him too, but at the same time, I'm also like, I feel like I would destroy it. Like, if my world was like that, I would kind of just be like, I love this place, but it's not great for anybody. Like, they have no lives except for in virtual reality, which isn't really real. And even the version of James Holiday even talks about how like, I created the Oasis to get away from the world because I thought that I didn't have a place in it, and in reality I didn't live, and I never took the chance to, you know, ask the woman of my dreams out, and this and this and this, and I didn't live. And it wasn't until I was close to death that I realized that. So he literally told Wade, like, you know, you need to live your life too. So if need be, if you need to destroy this thing and you realize that it's destroying people's lives, then you have to. And I just thought that that was a really great note to end it on. Yeah, it's a really great novel and I really loved it. It really lived up to my expectations. Questions or comments, please leave them down below. I'm always looking for future book recommendations as well. So if you have any recommendations for books or movies or TV shows or anything like that, I will gladly take a look at them because I have no social life just like Wade does. So I have all the free time in the world. Well, not all the free time in the world, but I can make free time. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I appreciate it. And I will see all you guys next time. Okay, bye.